we've talked at length about God of War. It's my favorite franchise, and with every pass I find myself dwelling on new theories and thoughts that I'd never considered. I don't necessarily like to make theory-based videos because one detail could debunk an entire theory, and also it's hard to come up with something that nobody's ever thought of before without being completely ridiculous. For example, is Kratos actually Crash Bandicoot? But recently a thought crossed my mind that I just couldn't shake. A while back, I made the observation that the games could have gone entirely differently if Ares could have just pinned the death of Calliope and Lysandra on Athena. It would have made sense and would have allowed Ares to make Kratos the perfect monster without Kratos betraying Ares, assuming Kratos never found out the truth. But while I considered that, a thought occurred. What if Ares was never actually the true antagonist? What if Zeus was never the true antagonist? What if the true antagonist of this series was hiding just under our noses? Not just when she revealed herself to be abundantly evil, but from the very beginning. What if every single thing that happened in the original God of War series was an incredibly elaborately orchestrated plan by Athena to become the true god over all? The more I think about it, the more I wonder. Athena is considered in many interpretations to be among the smartest gods/goddesses, if not the smartest god/goddess. She's literally the goddess of wisdom, as well as many other things which include war and strategy. So it's no stretch to consider that she could think circles around other gods, even her own father if she wanted to. So let's roll with this and see where it takes us. Re-examine all of her actions under this light and see if it can all fit. If I had to guess, I believe that much in the same way the gods were corrupt long before Pandora's box was opened, Athena could have probably been planning to overthrow the gods for some time and was just waiting for the correct opportunity. If this is indeed an interpretation with any legs under it, I'm not sure when Athena started seeing Kratos as the linchpin of her plan, because that may or may not give us an indication on how long she would have been planning this for. Is it possible that she saw potential in Kratos from the moment she first saw him, when she and Ares invaded Sparta to kidnap his brother? Is that why Athena insisted on sparing Kratos? And in fact, was it a genuine mistake when they kidnapped Deimos when Kratos would end up being the marked warrior to bring down Olympus? Or was that a deliberate mistake that Athena orchestrated to plant the seeds of resentment towards the gods from the very beginning? To me, there are three possible points where she could have decided to champion Kratos. You have this point, you have the period of time when Kratos was a slave to Ares, or you have the period of time when Kratos was a servant to the gods. If it is this early on, the only piece of evidence to suggest Athena might have already seen potential in him is simply the fact that she chose to spare him and apologized for what her and Ares were doing. But I don't think there was enough potential on display here for them to see it just yet. Plus, during this time, Kratos didn't have any marks on him to indicate him as the marked warrior. Athena could have very well been planning to use Deimos for these purposes until she saw Kratos as an adult and saw the writing on the wall, at which point Deimos would become irrelevant to her plan, though she probably kept up the ruse and told Kratos not to pursue Deimos in order to further that resentment. But then again, I could be wrong. She could have very well seen the mistake that they were making and chose not to correct it in order to use Kratos on a later date. As for the period of time when Kratos was a slave to Ares, he was definitely showing his potential as a plundering, conquering warmonger. She could have seen what Kratos was doing and wanted to use him for her own means. Pronouns, pal. So she could have waited for Ares to screw the pooch, or perhaps, mental gymnastics, Athena could have put the idea in Ares' mind that Kratos was being held back by his family. It would be very easy to put that idea into Ares' mind without also incriminating yourself. You know, because Ares is stupid. She could have put the idea into Ares' head while also making him think it was his own idea to have Kratos kill his own family. It would have probably been very easy for her to pull the strings behind the scenes. And I don't think there's any evidence to contradict this, so it's perfectly legal headcanon. As for the third option, well, the third option would be her seeing potential in Kratos while he was an indentured servant to the gods for 10 years. Basically, this third option just exists because if it isn't option A or B, it's option C. But if my speculation on Athena's true intentions is correct in any way, there's no hard evidence to suggest any one point she could have decided to champion Kratos. So it's just down to personal discretion. I would like to think that she saw potential in him from the very beginning, but to have planned this from the beginning and to have things play out the way they did, that's a lot of variables to keep in the air. She would have to know he would grow up to become a general of the Spartan army, face an enemy he couldn't defeat, pledge himself to Ares, and that Ares would eventually betray him before being able to take Kratos under her wing. That's what we call a bridge too far, even for the goddess of wisdom and strategy. The more likely option for me is the second one. Athena saw potential in Kratos while he was a slave to Ares and decided to take advantage of the situation. And I choose to believe that Athena did put the idea into Ares' head that Kratos hadn't reached his full potential. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this major turning point in Kratos' life took place in the Temple of Athena. It seems that Athena was always at the center of anything going on with Kratos, but to me it seems like she was always staying just out of the limelight enough to have plausible deniability. And from this moment she could just sit back and watch the fireworks happen, not just with Ares but with the gods themselves. Everything that happened in the first 10 years of servitude leading into the first God of War game only built that resentment to the eventual boiling point. Even in Chains of Olympus, which takes place I believe 5 years before the first game, Kratos is already done with the gods' shit. And each time he does a thankless task for the gods, it's always Athena who directly communicates with him. Makes you think. She could very well be playing Peacekeeper and biding her time. So now we get to the events of the first God of War game and the potential of Athena being the master manipulator therein. And we're going even deeper into theoretical territory here. This is where one of the separations between the book and the game come in, and this theory is actually a good means to explain away one of the plot holes. You see, in the game, when Kratos is talking to Athena after the Ares boss fight, as well as the same scene in the novel, Athena uses the noun gods when referring to the decision not to wipe Kratos' memory.
The gods are indebted to you. We promised your sins would be forgiven, and so they are. But we never promised to take away your nightmares. No man, no god could ever forget the terrible deeds you have done.
But as the novel will tell us, the decision was solely Zeus's, which means that Athena straight up lied to Kratos. A bit of an inconsistency, am I right? Well, what if that was the intention? What if, years before, she implied to Kratos that his slate would be wiped clean, knowing full well that Zeus wouldn't go for that, and also pleaded to Zeus, knowing that he wasn't going to go for it, thereby playing both sides off each other and throwing off suspicion from herself to both sides, so that neither would ever suspect her true intentions. That way she comes across as the reasonable one to all involved when there would have been more going on in her head. This is all speaking hypothetically, of course, and in this hypothetical she deliberately lied and used a plural noun to imply that it was a group decision to force Kratos to live with his memories. That way, Kratos would then gain further resentment for the entire council of Olympian gods for tricking him and not just Zeus. This betrayal by the gods would only ever have one outcome, but of course, she tells Kratos all this, knowing full well that they were never gonna let Kratos, well, you know, and they were about to make him the new God of War. We never see exactly what led to the Council of Gods deciding that Kratos becoming the new God of War was a great idea, but surely, if no one else, someone as smart as Athena could have been able to see the issue here. But perhaps she not only let it happen, but I propose that she may have been the one to suggest it. To everyone else, it might make sense that someone who was able to defeat Ares should be the new God of War. But perhaps she was trying to elect as God of War someone even more volatile than Ares himself in order to set the stage for the downfall of the gods. And not only volatile, but also someone with a conflict of interest and pre-existing biases. He was a proud Spartan warrior, so of course as the God of War, he would deliberately skew the odds towards Sparta. And that's where we find ourselves at the beginning of God of War 2. Already, you can kind of get the sense that Kratos is not endearing himself to the other gods, and that's confirmed with things like Ghost of Sparta, which takes place between God of War 1 and 2, where Kratos, among other things, destroys Atlantis, kills Thanatos, and basically spends the entire game doing everything the gods tell him not to do. Although, how Kratos remembers Deimos well enough to have gotten the tattoos that matched his birthmarks, but didn't remember Deimos well enough to remember why he disappeared, is a mystery to me. Matter of fact, the Gravedigger, who is Zeus for those of you in the cheap seats, made it well known at the end of Ghost of Sparta that Kratos is the only one left in the family and was soon going to die. Lol. So it's clear by this point that the Olympians are already fed up with Kratos and they just need the excuse. So from my interpretation, this was the perfect opportunity for Athena to initiate the next part of her plan. Kratos destroying her city gives her just cause to have him dealt with. If the novelization of the first game is any indication, Athena is Zeus's favorite. I'm thinking that Athena was the one to suggest Zeus go at it alone with the Blade of Olympus. She probably used her lofty position in order to get Zeus to do her a solid. And the suggestion of using the Blade of Olympus would make sense to Zeus as they wouldn't want to risk fighting Kratos at full power. It makes much more sense to trick him into giving up his powers by pretending to be on his side. But the Blade of Olympus is paramount to Athena's plan because it's the only thing that can, if not depower them, give Kratos the power to destroy the Olympian gods with ease. So of course, if she's trying to become the supreme ruler of Olympus, she'd want Zeus to introduce that weapon into play. In addition, if she was able to convince Zeus to take out Kratos while also remaining out of the fight, that gives Athena plausible deniability. She can still technically act like Kratos' ally when it's all said and done, because as far as Kratos is concerned, at least after the fake-out, it was all Zeus. Of course, Zeus's dialogue to Kratos doesn't quite match up with the possibility that Athena was behind Zeus's decision to put Kratos down like a dog.
It is my way that is the way of the gods. You must vow to forever serve me. I serve no one. Then you'll leave me no choice.
But like I said, with everything that Kratos had been doing since he became the god of war, chances are Zeus was just looking for the excuse. What the Gravedigger said confirms as much. What happens next is where the theory gets a little bit shaky, because I don't think there was any way for Athena to know that the Titans would enlist Kratos to their cause. But if I had to guess, I think that Athena knew that Kratos would find a way. He had already clawed his way out of Hades once before, so based on her strategic planning, she probably saw Kratos getting out of the underworld and tracking down the Sisters of Fate to change history as the most likely outcome. How he got from point A to point B probably didn't matter as much, and sparking a second Titan war was probably just a bonus, but it's also not out of the question that she predicted the Titans making a comeback. I can't say for sure how much foresight Athena's strategic planning gives her. Good strategic planning is indistinguishable from seeing the future, which may or may not have been something that Sun Tzu said. However, it's also worth mentioning that she does have at her disposal an oracle, the Oracle of Athens, so technically she does have access to someone who can see the future even if Athena herself can't. So assuming the Oracle was willing to go along with her schemes, Athena could have probably been able to foresee Kratos being turned on by the gods and being resurrected via the Titans in order to fulfill their schemes, going after the Sisters of Fate and unleashing Tartarus both figuratively and literally. But then again, that would also mean the Oracle of Athens foresaw her own death, so it's questionable if she would have gone along with Athena at that point. I mean, if this is all true, then the entire role for the Oracle would be to be led to the slaughter and allow Athens to be destroyed. But then again, perhaps she was seeing the future only as it applied to Athena and Kratos. Perhaps the details of her own future slipped past her because she wasn't looking directly at her own future. There's a lot of variables to keep in mind here. If the Oracle plays a part in this, I believe that she helped Athena plan every single step up to Athena's death. But the Oracle herself dying at the end of the first game might have been the reason for a few strategic blunders made along the way. Most of all, Kratos being infused with the power of hope without anyone's knowledge, and Athena not accounting for Kratos defying her in the end. Or perhaps the opposite is true. Perhaps the Oracle didn't want to go along with Athena's plans but was forced to, and maybe even saw her own death, but as an act of defiance didn't give Athena the whole story and so led her along knowing that she would fail in the end. However, that only goes so far, but I don't think there's enough evidence to suggest one way or the other. All I can do is speculate that Athena knew what she was doing. And speaking of knowing what she was doing, the end of God of War 2. I'm not sure at what point they decided that Athena was going to be a constant presence in God of War 3, but the way they play her death makes me feel like this wasn't initially supposed to be an intentional thing. But retroactively, based on how God of War 3 goes, my only choice is to speculate that she intended to have her physical form destroyed here, to take the bullet so to speak, in order to further her plans by shedding her physical body. But her speech to Kratos was meant as a means for her to play it off like this wasn't her intention, to bring herself across as an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire rather than a schemer.
Why do you sacrifice yourself?
To save Olympus.
Because the next phase of her plan is arguably the most important. The next time we see her is in God of War 3, only now in the form of a ghost, right after Kratos is thrown from the top of Mount Olympus. And let's pause on this for a second, because I feel like this is actually the strongest piece of evidence to suggest that she had been planning this from the very beginning. She is one of only two gods to have a non-physical form, the other being Zeus briefly in the final boss of 3. Once again, Athena is Zeus's favorite, so I wonder if Zeus either taught her the secret to life beyond her existence, or if she stole the secret knowing that one day she was going to initiate a plan that would leave her as ostensibly the last Olympian, with Kratos as the last man standing. Every other god either disintegrates or they leave behind their body. Even Gaia, the mother of all creation, doesn't have a non-physical form, unless you count the time she came to Kratos in his dreams. This makes me believe that Athena living beyond her physical form got destroyed was orchestrated. Because why would Athena, of all gods, be the one to survive after her death unless there was some exterior meddling going on? It can't be a coincidence. God of War 3 is where this little thought pattern gets very interesting to me, because this is where Athena goes full mask off and decides to not only be on Kratos' side in his revenge against Zeus, even while god after god gets in the way and ends up as collateral damage, but she is actively advising him on what to do. To me, this is the final phase of her plan. She actively told Kratos at the end of the second game that all the gods would try and stop him.
God after God will deny you, Kratos. They will protect Zeus. Zeus must live so that Olympus will prevail.
So the fact that she knew that makes me believe that this was all part of her plan, to drive out all the Olympians more powerful than her one by one. I kind of assumed at first that she was looking to have Kratos give her all of the power of the Olympian gods combined, but I kept forgetting the actual ending to the game, because the power of the rest of the gods aren't what matters. To Athena, the only power that matters is her own. The ending is where she lays it all bare. Not literally, but this is God of War we're talking about, so I wouldn't be shocked if she did. Essentially, when Pandora's box was created to house all the evils of the world, she summoned her most powerful magic, the power of hope, and put it into the box out of fear of what might happen if the box was ever opened. So she says anyway. Once again, she could have very well have been lying to make Kratos be on her side, and this could have just been her contingency plan. Also, her wanting the power of hope to be released would also explain the gods' insistence on Kratos using Pandora's box in the first game. And once again, she could have been the one to suggest using Pandora's box. Be that as it may, she wanted Kratos to retrieve the power and use it to defeat Zeus. Now that he's defeated, Athena wants to take it back, and with that, the world will hear her message. F***ed if I know what that's supposed to mean. But to me, that says she wants to take the power and rebuild the world in her image. It's no coincidence to me that she waited until after Zeus was dead to take the power back, when she could have technically done so at any time. Even though she didn't know that Kratos had it for many years until that moment, but either way, if she didn't need Zeus out of the way before taking the power back, she could have manipulated Kratos into thinking that she needed said power to help him take Zeus out. But the fact that she let Kratos take out Zeus first means to me that this was her plan all along. She claims that she wanted to help Kratos take out Zeus because he was corrupt and insane because of the manipulation of Pandora's box, but once again, she could very well have just been lying to manipulate Kratos into thinking that she was on his side. To me, it makes more sense that her stake in this would have been self-motivated rather than having a righteous sense to take out Zeus because he's completely nuts, especially because that's a blatant contradiction of what she said at the end of God of War 2. That's the thing about theories like this. You can take everything at literal face value, or you can read into the intentions behind the character's actions. I know it's probably a bit lame that a lot of this theory can only be explained by Athena lying to everyone to trick them, but I think there's enough theoretically hard evidence here that her playing the long game isn't out of the question. And it's undeniable that her scheming led to this moment where Kratos was supposed to give her back the power of hope. Being the goddess of strategy, she could have probably planned this from the very beginning point for point and calculated every single minute detail with such precision that it would leave her right here at the end with Kratos the last man standing. But her plan hinged on Kratos giving all of his power over to Athena. She never counted on Kratos doing the right thing. And that's the one miscalculation she made, because in the end, Kratos chose to die as a man rather than live as a monster. Although yes, he didn't actually die. If you interpret this trilogy this way, and you take into account that he was a pawn in Athena's plan from the very beginning, it actually makes this moment all the sweeter, because it just adds another item to the list of people who used him. He was a pawn to Ares, a pawn to the gods, a pawn to the Titans, and a pawn to Athena from the very beginning without even knowing it. That means this act of defiance is Kratos finally being able to take control of his life for the first time in many years. In 3 especially, these mask slips by Athena aren't unintended details. This was definitely the story they were writing for Athena, and I don't know if they were intentionally going in this direction from the beginning, but as I always say, death of the author. Creator intention has no power over your own individual interpretation. And for me, this is all about piecing together the evidence, intentional or otherwise, to suggest that Athena was planning the ultimate coup from the beginning of the God of War series, not just in God of War 3. I'm only prepared to say that it was their intention to have her be evil in the 3rd game, but that doesn't mean we can't interpret her actions preceding that as we wish. And admittedly, there's no basis behind some of this speculation other than what would have made sense to the theory. With that said, I absolutely think in my own interpretation that Athena was the mastermind behind the entire series. Everything happened because she made it happen. We thought Zeus was the main villain? No. Athena is absolutely the true villain that you never even saw coming. She may have only been straight up evil in God of War 3, but there's enough that you can retroactively go back and reconsider her actions. Some of her actions may have seemed counterintuitive to the overall plan, but to me that comes across like playing the long game, or throwing off suspicion. If you're the smartest god, then you know exactly what to do in order to further your own intentions while also making it seem that you're completely innocent. So Athena, you are guilty of masterminding the entire God of War franchise. At least as I see it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. As I said at the top, for me, I find it nearly impossible to come up with something that hasn't already been thought up by 100 people. Even as I sit here at my desk speaking into my microphone, I wonder to myself, what are the odds that somebody has already covered this topic? So if you've already seen this topic covered, I genuinely apologize. I know it sounds like a complete cop-out, but I swear on my grave this is true. I don't actually watch that much YouTube despite making my own videos. It's a time versus interest thing. I have more time these days, but generally, I don't want to watch something unless I'm turbo interested in the topic, but also not so familiar with the topic that I already have my own opinion. So it's a bit of a catch-88 in a lot of cases. If you like what I do and want to support my channel, you can support me on Patreon and get unique perks such as early access, a private Discord server, and even exclusive content. Like these people here. And if you want to support the channel for free, you can like this video, leave a comment telling me what you think, subscribe, and hit the notification icon so you're always up to date on what I'm doing. Otherwise, I've been the King of Snark Style, and I will see you next time. Peace!